Hi, this is Steve All, the All Financial Group. I want to welcome everybody to the July 16th Town Hall for the All Financial Group. We're grateful that those that are here live with us and those that will be listening to it, the recording of it. So I am going to go ahead and start out this first segment. I'm going to pass it over to Will and let him chat with us for a little bit first.
Thank you so much, Steve. Hello, everyone. Good to come back after a couple weeks. Today, just following with my educational sectors, right? We are going to talk about requirement minimum distribution. So that's a lot, something that a lot of people do not know, surprisingly, but it's also really confusing. Why? Because they change the law sometimes, many times, and they change different stuff that affects our clients. So we always trying to be on top of, the knowledge and trying to make sure that you know what is happening to see when is the best time to do your required minimum distribution, when you need to do your social security, right? So you don't have any type of penalties. So we call it RMD, in required minimum distribution. It comes with penalties, it comes with taxes, and today we're going to dissect a little bit and talk to you about requirement minimum distributions. First of all, when do they start? Right? You remember some of you went to seminars before. You heard Steve saying that, they taught you whenever you start working, you have to defer your money, defer, and then eventually, right, you will be in a lower tax bracket. Surprise, you may be in it, you may be not, but requirement minimum distributions affects traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs. And all of these are deferred tax vehicles. So you did not pay taxes whenever you were contributing, but whenever you have to distribute, they require you to take that money, you will have to pay taxes at that moment, whatever tax bracket you have. So, and also, he does this little game and he put these different numbers on the board and saying, like, when is actually the required minimum distribution age? That varies. Before 1951, we have 72, 51 to 59, we have 73, and everything above 1960, 75. By the time I will retire, I do not know what will be the age I will need to take requirement minimum distributions, but there's something really good to follow. So anyone that there's after 1960, remember, for right now is 75 years old, you require a minimum distribution. So remember too that you must take your first requirement distribution in April 1st of the year after you turn the age of the requirement minimum distribution, and every December 31st after that. So we always, I will tell you, at a side note, we are on top of these type of situations. We have clients that actually they need to have a requirement minimum distribution. We trying to let them know if we don't see they actually take a disbursement by around October, that's whenever Stacy starts sending different type of reminders to, like, please do not forget to take your requirement minimum distribution. But also, what happens if you do not take that requirement minimum distribution that year? It used to be, it will be a 50% penalty. But now they actually reduce it to 25% according to the Secure Act 2.0. So it is a change, right? From 50 and 25. So that's something that helps a lot in case, right, you are not taking your RMDs that year. Requirement minimum distribution also affects a lot in your tax planning strategies, right? The first one we'll talk about is the Roth conversions. So whenever we have clients come to the office and we do their specific analysis for them, we're trying to see if a Roth conversion makes sense for the future, right? It's not only just exchange, pay the taxes and move from IRA to Roth IRA, but also if it actually will help you in your retirement, right? Sometimes we see that could help to your heirs, but we believe also that portions of your IRA can be moved to actually reduce your IRAs by the time you hit your requirement minimum distribution age. Why? Because if you have a lot of money into your IRAs, right, and in some moment you realize that you are already meeting your expenses with your income at your age or RMD, whenever you're forced to take this amount of money out of your IRA, it will be taxed as an ordinary income. And guess what? Could affect your taxes. So it's really good to plan, to start to planning and see if there's no always to leave alone that IRA money. We're trying to make sure that we can shift it in different ways to be tax efficient in the future. Also, after you turn 70 and a half, remember there is a qualified charitable distribution for some of you that are charitable by nature. Remember, you can give to a qualified charity. Remember, kids and grandkids are not qualified charities. You can move from your IRA to that charity and none of you pay taxes. So that's another way to reduce that amount of IRA and be cautious of those RMDs. Also, the bridge income strategy. We do that, and in the general terms, we always talk about the positions, how will be most efficient for you to use your money, right? We have non-qualified money. This non-qualified could be the money that after taxes, you pay, put in your checking account, your savings account. You also have your IRAs. Make sure that IRA doesn't grow a lot, right? By the time you have big RMDs. And the last one will be the Roth IRA, that usually the Roth IRA money, sometimes we see it as a legacy plan because you probably won't touch that money or you will leave it to your heirs. So also dealing with requirement minimum distributions and also social securities. And if you have to take some money out, remember, all of that could affect your taxes. So that's the reason we do analysis of your social security. When should you take it? If you have a pension, if you have an IRA. So all the stuff gets together to be the most efficient for you. And we'll be able to do it and make sure that you don't have tax consequences by the time you're taking your requirement minimum distribution. But it helps you to be more efficient with your money and probably help you whenever your priorities change. And it's something that we have seen a lot. We have clients that come brand new in retirement, and one of their goals is my kids get what they get. And we're like, well, your kids have kids, you have grandkids? They're like, no. Well, wait for it. Because whenever you start having grandkids, it's whenever your priorities change. And probably at that time you start thinking about legacy. So it's better to plan it now in case that happens in the future. So that was my topic today. I think required minimum distribution is really important, affects a lot in your retirement planning. So thank you so much for listening today.
Thank you very much, Will. We appreciate that. Yeah, the RMDs, remember, it's a required minimum distribution, not a required minimum spend. You don't have to spend the money if you don't need it to live off of. The other thing that I like to remind people on the RMDs, if you're already taking 15,000 and your RMD is 12, you do not have to take more. The government just wants to make sure that they get their money back by minimum distributions from your accounts. So I've had some calls over the last week to 10 days about the big, beautiful bill. Everybody's got some of the highlights to it. One, no taxes on overtime pay, tips, I can now deduct the interest on my autos. State and local income taxes have gone to $40,000. And I always like to say the tax bill's fairly easy, but the devil's in the details. Because you have to look at each one of these. What things from the Trump tax cuts of 2017 have become permanent? Well, look at those tax brackets, those lower brackets that came in. They're now permanent and adjusted by inflation. The standard deduction, the higher number, is now permanent, and it's got slight increases each year also. It will be increased on a regular basis. So that's some of the things that became permanent. One of the other thing is the state tax is the estate tax exemption at 15 million per person. So those are some of the things that are permanent that most people talk about. Now we're going to talk about those things that are temporary. The state and local income tax. When they originally talked about it, it was 10 grand, went to 30. Nobody said they'd vote for it, so they moved it all the way up to 40. And then you look at the opposite side of it. One, that expires at the end of 2029. So this is not something that will go on forever. And this portion, like so many of the other portions of this bill, have income stops on them. At the end of 2029, if you're earning more than $500,000, and I know that's higher than what most people that we deal with in clients, but if you're earning more than that, it drops back down to the 10,000 that it was before. And remember, this is an increase in your deduction. So you still have to exceed that higher standard deduction. Now let's talk about some of the things that are temporary. We can call them gimmicks. We can call them carve-outs that were kind of political in nature. Overtime pay. A lot of people say, well, I don't have to pay taxes on my overtime pay anymore. Not necessarily a true statement. A single person may be able to deduct up to $12,500 of their overtime pay if their income is below $150,000. And if you're a married couple, it could be up to $25,000 in overtime pay. But if you're over 300, it reduces again. Tips, same type of a mentality. $25,000 can be removed from your tips. If you're single and over 150, that's not a true statement. Joint filer, $300,000. So again, they're all kind of tied. In my opinion, it kind of complicated the tax system a little bit more. I'm sure the TurboTaxes and the HR blocks and the people that make up the software for taxes are scrambling right now because the law's been put in and these are the interpretations. The IRS could interpret them differently. So we go to that. One of the other things that was talked about was auto loans. I can take, now I buy a car, I can take up to $10,000 off the interest on my car. Again, there are income limitations on it. 100,000 is a single person, 200 is joint, and it's only for new cars. It's only for new cars. And it is within that itemized deduction. So if you're a married couple and getting 30, you still have to get over that 30 to get a tax advantage of paying interest on your cars. And again, these things all sunset in 2028. So it's going to start and almost be over about the time that it does. The other thing that I've heard a lot, this is great. We no longer have to pay taxes on our Social Security. That's not a true statement either. Social Security taxation is a completely different tax law. So to change that, the House and the Senate would have to get together and actually change the law. Well, they kicked it down the can so far down the road. I can't see them doing that anytime real quickly to do this. They could have fixed a lot of the people that shouldn't be paying taxes on their Social Security by just changing that law. But what did they do? If you're over the age of 65, income limitations, again, single 75, married 150, you could get an extra $6,000 deduction. So those are the things that we have to look at. So it's not all cut and dry to the idea that everybody's going to get everything. Not necessarily a true statement. And that's what I said. We will continue to monitor this because we think it's important. As they give us the final interpretations, what the IRS thinks, then we'll be able to pass that information on. I just want to warn people. In 2020, they said that inherited IRAs could no longer be taken out over the lifetime of a non-spousal beneficiary. They finally told us what they meant by that law and how the IRS was going to interpret it in 2024. So there is possibilities that some of these headlines might not pan out the way most people think that they're going to pan out. So I think that's important to have people that are looking at this on a regular basis. When I come in, I get to talk to most people about this when they come in for us to do reviews. So those are some of the things that we actually get to look at. Where are you in that category? I'm going to go ahead and share a screen. We do have some things coming up here in the future. We have a taxes and retirement event. We've been doing that for about a year and a half now. Why? It's on everybody's mind. So therefore, we're looking at this in August, the 26th and the 28th, will be at Fleming's in Frontenac Plaza. Reminder, you have to have a reservation to come. If you're a client and you have a guest that you'd like to bring with you, please call the office. Make your reservation for yourself and your guest. We also have our 15th anniversary dinner. That is September the 18th, and it is by reservations. The room is not big enough to hold all of our clients. So once you get that invitation, I am going to ask you, please respond to it because we do have a limited number of seats. And I want to say thank you for everybody that's referred people to us this year. It's one of the largest groups of people that we do new business with. We have for the past couple of years. So I want to thank you for referring family and friends because we like to work with people like you. So again, thank you very much for referring your families and your friends.